So the biggest challenge I faced in my career was a few years back. I would say several years back now. I was leading this organization or a project for a big company, and they had asked me to take a technology that was developed in the lab and commercialize it, and set up a subsidiary. Invested a lot in this project, and I discovered a few months into the project that the technology was not viable for commercialization, and the research lab had made some errors in judgment in the conclusions they made. So I had to go tell the CEO, and I was just a junior person in the company at the time, to kind of say that this idea is not going to work. We need to shut it down. And the lab had made some mistakes and errors in judgment, and it was just very, very scary for me to do that. It was a big risk I thought I was taking in my career, but I picked up the courage to do that. I had a very small team, and I was also afraid for their jobs because they would all go away. Basically, we had to shut down the project. But as it turned out, it was probably a blessing in disguise. The fact that me and my team had the technical integrity to point out that things were not going to work rather than just kind of continue with the project got me promoted as a result of that. So if I flash back to the start of my career, what I wish somebody had told me earlier in my career is to take risks sooner. I felt that I was somewhat risk averse in the early parts of my career. Especially if you're doing well in your career, you tend to think that you shouldn't make a change and you should just continue on the path because things are working out and you're doing well. And you're getting promoted. But now when I advise people, actually tell them the opposite is true. When you're doing well is when you should make a change in your career. I wish I had somebody tell me that. Because when you take a risk, I think it is also very rewarding to see things work out. And earlier in your career, actually, you can afford to take more risks than when you're more established and you have a reputation you feel like you have to protect. So I think the fear of failure is lower at the start of your career than it is as you mature in your career. So that's a piece of advice I wish I had got when I was starting off. So the number one life hack I use to be productive is kind of mentally, and actually I physically write down a list of everything I want to get done that day and that week. I'm a very list-driven person, and I feel like that allows me to first, actually I did that this morning, Monday morning, start of my week, I get up and I kind of take 5 minutes to think about what is it that I want to get done that week and that day. And then as the day and the week goes by, I cross off things off my checklist that I've done, and sort of allows me to prioritize, stay focused, and get a bunch of things done. I mean, of course, there are weeks and days where you only get through 30% of the list you made for yourself. That makes you feel maybe inadequate. And so the thing is to mentally know, and this is what I actually do, I write down more things than I know I have time or bandwidth to get done. And so it doesn't feel bad when you don't feel like you've gotten through the whole list. So I think in some ways I know that I stretch the amount of things that I want to go do. So that's the number one thing I do. The other thing I do, actually started doing now that we're all working from home last year to now during the pandemic, is I build in what I call micro breaks into my career, into my schedule, I'm sorry. And these micro breaks allow me to just step away from the screen, go outside, take a breath of fresh air, walk a few steps, come back. I take time to read, for 10 minutes in between meetings. On Fable, my company, it is a mobile app for reading, and so I have it on my phone. And so while I'm taking this short break, I just go to Fable and read something for 5-10 minutes. I think these kinds of things really help me stay refreshed and don't make me feel like I'm just sitting all day in front of a computer. The secret, my secret, I should say, to making a good hire, I always test to see, are they a fast learner? I think to me, what is important when you hire people is their ability to learn and adapt very quickly. Things are changing so fast, and whether it's a small company or a big company, if you don't have the talent base where people are eager to learn, want to learn, can learn quickly, it becomes very difficult to reskill or adapt to whatever the company is changing to trying to do. I actually say this is the biggest quality a leader needs to have as well. So I often tell people I value their expertise and ability to learn more than I value their experience. Meaning, just because you have a certain set of experiences doesn't mean they're very translatable in a new job, in a new environment. Not everything that worked in one company will work in another company. And so, what you really need to bring when you go to a new job is expertise and not necessarily experience. And so, oftentimes people confuse the two. And to me, there's a big difference. So, I actually explicitly state that, and I purposely look for people who bring their expertise and have the ability to learn. My three biggest goals for 2021 is first to read every day, at least for 21 minutes, hopefully more than that. My stretch goal is 30 minutes every day. So that's one goal. And so far I've been on a good streak, keeping pace with that. My second goal is to make sure I'm dedicating the time to take care of my health. I think one of the things that happens as we are working from home and we're juggling so many things, we just try to, we forget that, we need to walk, we need to take time to exercise, we need time to do other things that focus on our physical wellness as well. So that's my second goal. So you can say like first two goals really have to do with my overall wellness. The first one, reading, is really about mental wellness and how do I take time to read every single day to help my mental wellness. And the second one has to do more with my physical wellness. My third goal has to do with my startup. Fable, I think we launched the product, we're just getting traction. I want to make sure we focus on turning a cool product into a business this year. And so focusing on customers, focusing on getting traction, getting more users on the platform, a lot to do. And so that's sort of like the third goal is really all of that. My number one advice for women coming into the tech industry or in the tech industry to make a successful career is to have confidence, self-confidence in themselves. I think women tend to be underestimated, unfortunately, and that sometimes makes us second guess ourselves. My number one advice is don't let anybody tell you what you can or cannot do. I think you need to have the self-confidence and push the boundaries and know that women can and must do things that they feel are fulfilling for themselves. And I think knowing that there are other women, we are all here to support women that are in the tech industry. This is something I'm very passionate about. And so that's my number one advice. With respect to how do companies create an environment that is much more inclusive, I have now started to talk about creating an environment where people feel like they belong more than even just being included, right? And so far, we focused on diversity and inclusion. I think now we need to move beyond that and think about how do we help people belong where they're working and where they're speaking. I think if it's one thing 2020 taught us, it is that when people feel like they don't belong or they're made to not feel like they don't belong, it causes so many issues, I think. And that is something that really we need to learn how to do and make it a priority. What that means is not just hire somebody who's different from you, but make sure they have a seat at the table, make sure they can be who they are authentically, allow them to be a full person when they come to work and not have to check out parts of themselves at home. And I think these are things that will help people feel like they belong. I think one thing that Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, all these things have taught us is belonging is where our attention needs to be going forward. So yeah, I am a big reader. Love books, love stories. I typically read fiction, and that's my favorite kind of reading. And within fiction, I read a lot of science fiction. But I would say one book I have read recently. I mean, there have been many books that have impacted who I am as a person, how I think throughout my life. But just recently, I'm just finishing this book called The Ministry for the Future. And it's such an amazing book. It's written by a science fiction author, but it focuses on climate change and how it affects, how it will affect all of us. And I feel like that book, it's sort of like I said, a cross between a fiction and a nonfiction. But the one thing I think for me, if I think about what the author did, Kim Stanley Robinson, it's sort of like make the data feel very real and very personal. It's sort of like the way he tells the story, you sort of feel like you know the characters, and it just makes it very personal. At some level, we all think climate change is something out there that somebody else needs to go fix. Governments need to fix this, or agencies need to fix this. But it's really all up to all of us. And so I think it's really opened my eyes on how this is just such a personal issue, and each of us can do our part. And so there's just that book I feel is such a treasure. It just has so many data points, but also the words are beautiful, and it sort of feels very real when you read it. And yeah, I would say that book more recently has really touched me.